że nasze zmysły są ściśle skorelowane z otaczającym nas środowiskiem. Nasze zmysły, wzrok, słuch, dotyk, smak itd. są współzależne z otaczającym nas światem i stanowią z nim jeden symbiotyczny organizm.
Hi Rupert, it's
Hello.
Anna.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. There are two words which are really piquing my interest, and I wonder if you could help me understand them. One is reality, and a bit of context with that is I don't feel like things are very real. I haven't got that really present, things are real experience. And I have had an experience once where suddenly it was like, oh my goodness, this is really happening. And that went, but I haven't forgotten it. And I had a helpful understanding through Francis last month, where he talked about two realities. There can't be two separate realities. For one thing to be able to know another thing, they have to be part of the same reality. And I seem to think I'm a separate reality. But if I'm in contact with all of this, it must mean this is one reality. So that's my first question. And the second word which is related is humility, because I really feel like this sense of being real, things being real, is related to humility. So those are the two words, and I wonder if you could help me.
Well, Anna, you as a person have emerged from the universe. Your body has been born from the earth. So whatever you as a person essentially are must be the same as the universe from which you have emerged, for the same reason that whatever a wave essentially is must be the same as what the ocean essentially is, because it's an emergence of that ocean. So, yes, the reality of yourself and the reality of the world must be the same reality. So the question then is, what is that? The reality is that which truly is. So, an illusion is not something that does not exist. It is something that does exist, but is not what it appears to be. So, for instance, a square circle, not only does a square circle not exist, we cannot even have an illusion of a square circle. Can anybody here imagine a square circle? Could we ever represent a square circle or even imagine it? It's not possible. So a square circle doesn't even appear as an illusion, let alone existing. However, a landscape in a movie does exist. Something is obviously there. We can't say it's nothing. It's obviously something. But what is there is obviously not a landscape. So the landscape that appears in the movie is an illusion. But all illusions have a reality to them. There must be something about the landscape in the movie that is real. And in order to find out what is real, we need to somehow penetrate through the illusion and touch its reality. When we go up to the landscape in the movie, we touch its reality and we find the screen, relatively speaking. So, relatively speaking, the screen is the reality of the illusory landscape. So, we do exactly the same with this experience. This experience that we are having is undoubtedly real. That there is something all experience is real. There's no such thing as an unreal experience. So, but the question is, what is real about our current experience, the experience of the world? It could be an illusion, which doesn't mean to say that it's not real, doesn't mean to say that it doesn't exist. It just means that it may not be what it appears to be. Now, the way the world appears to be is directly correlated with our sense perceptions. Our minds have the capacity of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. And surprise, surprise, reality appears to us in the form of sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. In other words, there is a direct correlation between the perceiving apparatus, our mind, and the appearance of the world. The world appears in accordance with the limitations of the apparatus through which it is perceived. White snow appears orange when you perceive it through orange-tinted glasses. Reality appears to us in the form of sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells when we perceive it through the faculties of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. So, do the sights, sounds, tastes, etc. that we see out there, do they have their own standalone reality, or do our minds confer upon them their appearance? For instance, what would the thing in itself be if we were to remove everything from it that our minds project onto it? If you were to remove sights, sounds, tastes, textures, smells, and concepts, if you were to remove perception and thought, perceiving and thinking, what would be left of reality?
Well, there wouldn't be divisions between one thing and
There
another.
wouldn't be any divisions, because the divisions are created by the activity of thinking, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. It would be yes, there'd be no divisions, and there'd be no form. Because the forms that we perceive are all forms that we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. So what would remain would be undoubtedly present, but it would be without any division, and it would be without any form. So it would be, and it would be one, because there's nothing in it to divide it, and it would be formless. That's being, God's being.
But that being, I know I'm putting on top the understanding here, but that being has to be known in order for us to say that it is being, the being and knowing.
Yes, so go to that being in yourself, because you cannot directly investigate the being that lies behind appearances in the world, because your only knowledge of the world, your knowledge of the world is mediated through sense perception. But you can directly investigate your own being. Yes? The awareness of being doesn't go through perception. It's the direct experience of being. So, and that's the experience, the awareness of being, the experience that shines in each of us as the knowledge I am. So that the experience I am is the one experience that each of us has that is not mediated through thought or perception. Now, what is it that enables you to say for certain I am? You know that I am. In fact, when we say I am, what we're really saying, it's a shorthand way of saying I know that I am. The reason we can assert I am is because we know that I am. We're not imagining it. We know for absolute certainty. In fact, the knowledge I am has a degree of certainty to it beyond any other certainty that we have. It is the most certain, secure knowledge. So the reason we know I am, the reason we can say I am is because we know I am. Now, when you say I am, you say, I know that I am. Is the I that I am the same I that knows that I am? Or is your being known by something other than itself? Are there two I's in you? One I that is, and another I that knows that you are.
I'm gradually saying that it's self-knowing.
Yes. When we say I know that I am, it's the same I. There's only one I in you. There's only one self in you. Your being knows itself. It is self-aware.
But then, just making a little leap, if I took away all those aspects of form, and there's then no divisions, then there's no divisions between this self-knowing and any other self-knowing, which sounds like a strange thing to say, that it's all self-knowing.
But that's why, although I didn't refer to this morning, because it's much easier to consider the possibility that the ultimate reality of the universe is being rather than consciousness.
That's easier.
It's easier.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't. That's why the meditation this morning was as it was. Mm-hmm. But I would go a step further on another occasion and suggest that the ultimate reality of the universe is not just being, but that it is aware being or consciousness. And that let me just say one other thing, and that what we perceive as the world is the activity of reality. Let's call reality consciousness. That consciousness, as it were, moves within itself, vibrates within itself. And that movement or vibration of consciousness, that activity of consciousness, appears when viewed through our sense faculties as the physical world. Just like the activity of your own, and we have a model for this. This is the beauty of it, that nature has given us a hint. When you fall asleep at night, the activity of your own mind appears as a physical world from the perspective of a separate subject of experience in that world. Now just go up one level and consider that what appears to us as a physical world is the activity of a universal mind or consciousness, whose nature is consciousness, not matter. But it only appears as physical matter when perceived through the sense perceptions of a separate subject of experience within that world. And there's a beautiful line in Wordsworth's Prelude. He said, therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and hills, of all the mighty, of all that we perceive from this green earth, of all the mighty world of eye and ear, both what we half create and half perceive. Well pleased, and it goes on, but the relevant lines. He's describing his love of nature, of all the mighty world of eye and ear. That is everything that we perceive with the eyes, the ears, and so on. Of all the mighty world of eye and ear, both what they half create and half perceive. This stunning realization That what the world, that the mighty world of all that we perceive of this green earth, of all the mighty world of eye and ear, that the world that we perceive is half created by us, half perceived by us. Well, what he's saying is that the reality of the world precedes the finite mind and is independent of it. I'm not suggesting the world is just a projection of the finite mind. That's a slippery slope to solipsism. I'm not suggesting that. There is much more to reality than the sum total of each of our finite minds. Reality precedes our finite mind, or our perception, its perception by our finite mind. So our finite minds perceive reality, half created and half perceive it. They create its appearance, but they perceive. The mind creates its appearance, but perceives its reality. Our sense faculties, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling, create the way the world the way reality appears to us, but we perceive the reality of the world. We don't create it. It's already there. So what Wordsworth's saying is the world, as we experience it, is half created by the senses. The senses lend the world its appearance, and half perceived, we perceive its reality. So what he's saying, to put it into more contemporary scientific language, is that the world as we experience, this is very close, possibly, I don't want to go too far in this direction because I'm not a scientist, but it's close to quantum physics. The world as we perceive it results from an interaction of infinite consciousness and a finite mind. A finite mind being a localization of infinite consciousness. And it is the interaction between these two that gives us the world as we experience. The world takes its reality from infinite consciousness. It is the activity of infinite consciousness. But it takes its appearance from being perceived by a finite mind. So it is the interaction of these two that creates the appearance of the world.
What I see happening is there's still a separating out of this one seeing reality.
Yeah, the separating out only comes after the fact, when we conceptualize individually existing selves and things. Mm-hmm. Have any of you read Ian McGilchrist's new book, The Matter with Things? He says something beautiful in it. He says, relationship precedes relata, by which he means relationship precedes things. It's a stunning understanding. But what it means, we normally think that there are things come first, and then there are relationships between things. He's suggesting, no, it's the other way around. There is relationship between the whole, infinite consciousness, and the part, the finite mind. And it is the interaction of these two that create the appearance of things. So things come as a result of the relationship between this interaction, rather than the relationship being created by the things.
And what you're saying in your metaphor is that it's something moving within itself.
Yes.
That appears as if there is a difference between the whole and the parts. But actually, the parts are just a movement of the whole.
Yes, so there is the whole, and it's not just a static whole. Mm-hmm. Reality is not just a dead, inert being or consciousness. It moves. It's moved. But the whole cannot see itself. The whole can only be seen from a perspective. Let me try to demonstrate, first of all, why the whole cannot see itself. Imagine this glass. And each of us sees this glass from a single point of view, and therefore we see a single glass. Now imagine that you were to take a snapshot of your view of this glass now, and then you were to change seats, go and sit on the other side of the room, take another snapshot of the glass, and superimpose, like an old-fashioned slide, superimpose the two images, one on top of the other. You'd now have two glasses looking roughly the same, but it would begin to be blurred. Now imagine you did that 4 times, and 8 times, and 16 times, and 32 times. You superimposed all the slides on top of each other, it began to look like a cubist painting. The integrity of the glass would begin to disintegrate. There'd be all angles, and you wouldn't. Now, keep on doing that. Keep on doing it over and over again. 32 times, 64 times, 128, 200, 400. Go on and on and on and on. Taking a view of the glass from all different points in space, your image would get darker and darker and darker. Yes? Now, imagine you were to take an image of the glass from every possible location in space. What would you see? Nothing. It would be utter darkness. That's why the whole cannot perceive reality. It cannot perceive the world directly. There's no form. From the point of view of the whole, consciousness has no knowledge of the world directly. It cannot perceive itself directly. It just knows its own being. But that being doesn't appear in any form. In order for its movement to be perceived or known, it must be perceived or known from a localized perspective. And that's what each of our minds are. A localized point of view within consciousness from which it is able to perceive its own movement, its own activity as an apparently physical world. So the activity of consciousness is there prior to the finite mind. But the finite mind lends the world its appearance. Hence, the world that we experience is an interaction between these two segments of reality. It's the same reality, infinite consciousness and the finite mind. But they have to seem to separate in order to bring something into existence.
And can you touch on humility?
Humility is the inevitable consequence of understanding what I have just tried to explain.
Thank you very much. That's lovely.
It's a very difficult thing to try to articulate. I'm sorry if I've done my best to make that clear. Yeah. It's difficult to make it clear and relatable to, and what I notice is that to begin with, what I'm suggesting, compared to conventional wisdom, it's so far out. It's so weird. It's so unbelievable that most people would consider it complete. Although that's actually not the case now. Things are changing. Many physicists would now take what I've just said seriously. But that's only very recent. But what's interesting about it is that when you begin to think about this, to begin with, it's so far removed from the way we normally think. But the more you think about it, the more you admit yourself, allow yourself to consider this possibility, and you begin to look at the world with this point of view, it begins to confirm itself. It gets more and more and more plausible. It suddenly begins to be more obvious. And it's not a kind of final understanding that one arrives at. My mind is continually going deeper and deeper. It's becoming clearer and clearer in my mind the more I explore this. The more clear and obvious it seems to be. It's like it's emerging. What's it emerging from? It's emerging from the conventional materialistic paradigm that we've all imbibed so deeply that we consider it to be so obvious that I'm a mind in here and it's matter out there. That this way of thinking, this paradigm, survives the recognition of our true nature. The recognition of our true nature is not enough to understand what we're talking about there. It's something that takes place afterwards. It's something that in my experience, it just, as the mind sinks deeper and deeper into this understanding, it just begins to emerge and get clearer and clearer. And then a mind that has considered these things over many years becomes very sensitive and fertile. And then you hear something. Relationship precedes relata, and something clicks in your mind, and your mind takes a quantum leap. Yes, that's it. That's all I needed to hear. And then the picture is clear. And then you're on to the next stage of your journey then. And then you go more deeper into it, and then you hear something. And suddenly there is this moment of understanding. And the moment of understanding is always accompanied by joy.